All right, we're back for another week of the live chat, the live show, whatever you want to call it. I'm your host, JHK, and today, of course, I got one of my favorites out there, Tom Taylor. You can see him on every website in the world, just about. But yeah, Tom. Yeah, we are just speaking before we went live about the world, man, and Canada. What's the situation? Because I'm pretty sure whatever you're going through, the fighters are going through it too. So what's going on over there?
Same as everywhere, man. Lockdowns all over the place, and the rules are constantly changing. Where I'm at in Ottawa right now, we're going through a state of emergency, so pretty much everything is shut down right now. So I'm just kind of stuck in my apartment, trying not to drink too much, trying not to play too many video games, and be productive. Same boat as everyone, man.
Yeah. What does the state of emergency look like?
I mean, it's rough here, man, because it's like it's cold right now. It's I don't know what is in Fahrenheit for all the Americans, but it's like -30 out here some days right now.
Yeah.
So, you can't even go outside and have like a nice walk these days. You're just really cooped up inside or having to brave the cold outside. But other than that, all the bars are closed, restaurants are closed. Grocery stores and the essentials are still open, but with all kinds of weird rules and stuff. So it's not a good time, man. I'm pumped for it to end, that's for sure.
No doubt, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, it seems like with Canada, it's a good sign, I guess, in some ways that it's opening up, but then closing back, which is better than not opening up at all and just keeping it closed. So we'll see what happens with that. And the Canadian fighters, they seem like they're able to leave the country, get back in. It's just that quarantine that they have to deal with. But every country has it pretty much. Almost
Hmm.
every country has it when you return. Either it's 2 weeks. Some places I feel like it's like 10 days. Other places 3 weeks. If you're coming from the UK, it's like 10 years. I don't know, man. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, man, it's a weird time. The problem is here, there's not a ton of like local MMA happening right now. Ordinarily, I would say the Canadian combat sports scene is not super healthy. I'd like to see more shows here, coast to coast. And during COVID, there's just way less than usual. So all the guys that would, normally be fighting in these local shows just can't fight, and they're not signed to the UFC, so they don't have a promotion flying them into the States, flying them to Vegas and Abu Dhabi. And it's got to be a rough time for these aspiring fighters that are trying to make names for themselves.
I see that a lot of fighters that are coming up right now, they might have to or they might be forced to end their career
Mm,
because of the pandemic because they have to choose between training and actually working a job where you don't know when you're going to work and you don't know when you're going to get fired, but you got to focus on having a job and supporting yourself or your family or whoever you need to support. And I think and it sucks to say, but we're going to lose a lot of great fighters during this time that we've never heard of, that we never are going to get to see their full potential, but they're going to hang them up and we'll just never hear from them again, which sucks because that kind of impedes the development of the sport, having these younger guys continue training for 5-10 years before we even see them in the cage, even notice them, but some of them will never see.
it's true, man. It's true. It's a brutal time for this sport, for every sport, I guess. But I hadn't really thought about that. But it's true. All these guys that would ordinarily be, competing every few months in regional shows, kind of looking to impress the UFC, impress the Bellator matchmakers and stuff. They're not able to do that, and they're not getting paid, and then surely, are running out of whatever savings they had, and
Yeah.
are now, working at Walmart and McDonald's. It's a rough time,
Also,
man.
connections.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's all about connection. It was about connections before and about who you knew or who you were around with or who you were friends with, but even more so nowadays, it's all about connections now.
Hmm.
It's do you sign with a certain management company? Before you could kind of get away with not having a manager and fighting locally and building yourself up, and then maybe the UFC notices you somehow some way and you could get a contract without a manager. Nowadays, I think that these promotions, they're only talking with managers now, that
Hmm.
because they need instant fill-ins, they need guys on call, and who knows all the guys on call? Who knows all the guys that are ready to fight? All the girls that are ready to fight? It's the managers. So
Hmm.
if you don't have one, and especially internationally, then you're just probably sitting on your hands training, but it might not even be the best training. And yeah, and it almost forces a lot of these guys, like I said earlier, to just hang them up and say, hey, I'm just gonna go work on, on the, I don't even know what you would turn to
That's it,
after
man.
retiring, right? Because there's so
A
many
lot of these.
different levels. There's guys that have college degrees, there's guys that don't have college degrees, there's guys that have connections in factories or fields or mountains. You could be a logger, a lumberjack, like Tom's, his
My whole family.
his yeah,
Yeah.
his whole family, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just it all depends. So yeah, if I was a fighter and I was making nothing and I wasn't even fighting and I haven't fought in over a year and I'm looking to have a normal life, I might have to choose to go get regular job now and
Hmm.
kind of put the fighting to the side and maybe train a little bit until the pandemic is over. But man, it's a
It's
lot of people
brutal,
don't
man.
talk about that. They don't talk about that side of it, of these younger guys that are great talents, but we'll
Hmm.
probably never see them.
It's true, man. I mean, there's not a lot of money in this racket under ordinary circumstances. These
Mhm.
guys are usually scraping by as is, and now suddenly when they can't fight, it's got to be a tough spot. And I think that's particularly true for international fighters outside the U.S. Fighters in Canada, fighters in South Korea. If you're in the States, it's obviously a tough time everywhere. But I think the silver lining there, if you're a young fighter, is that the UFC needs fighters like you said to step in on a week's notice, 6 days notice. And if you have a good manager who's connected with the UFC matchmakers and somebody falls with a fight, you might get a call to debut in the UFC on short notice. But if you're in another country, you're not going to get those opportunities because you just can't get over the borders to go take the opportunity. So it's I don't know. I'm glad I'm not a fighter right now. I'm
Yeah,
generally glad I'm not a fighter because I'm a wimp and I would not cut out for that
yeah,
life. But
both of us.
yeah.
You see a lot of fighters that are moving to Las Vegas before they're even signed, and you've seen a lot of guys that are just there or waiting, and then
Hmm.
they get picked up instantly and do very well in the UFC. We've seen a few of those performances last year, and also even established fighters are moving to Las Vegas too. They're just buying a house,
Hmm.
and from what I heard, it's not as cheap. Oh, what is it? Not as expensive, right, in Las
Hmm.
Vegas compared to, like, let's say California. California is just insane. Every fighter I talk to, they're always talking about how crazy expensive California is, and if it was that expensive, I probably wouldn't even live there, especially as a fighter, right? You got
Exactly, man.
people living in RVs and trailers and stuff, trying to live that fighter lifestyle, and it could be good, and it also could be bad. I mean, there's a lot of um things that could go wrong while living in a trailer, right? Just like a mobile home. It's
Yeah, no
not
doubt,
it's
man.
not an easy living right there.
Definitely
But
not.
but yeah, like even like guys are flying and staying in Abu Dhabi also.
Hmm.
I think Tai Tuivasa is doing his camp out there,
Yeah,
which
he's
is,
been there for a while, eh? Or
yeah,
I guess he's
and
not anymore, but
it's a trip. He's a trip because he's just everywhere. Like, he was at
mhm.
AKA for a while, and
Yeah.
then I believe he was in I think he was in North America just training for a while
Mhm.
before his last fight, and then now he's in Abu Dhabi. But before that, he was in Thailand
Yeah, he's
and
gonna
in other
Phuket, right?
countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
Hmm.
he's a free spirit, man. But we'll see what
Globetrotter, man.
happens.
I
Yeah,
love
it is.
fighters
It
like that
is.
who just go wherever the training's good.
Yeah.
Those guys always have such interesting stories too.
Oh, so this is interesting. It says Vegas has no income tax.
Yeah, I'd heard that
So
before too. I think that's why so many people are flocking there in this industry.
that's good, man. When you have to
Yeah.
pay taxes,
Yeah.
it sucks, especially like American taxes or Canadian taxes, right?
Hmm.
Canadian taxes are,
I think it's. I mean, people hate taxes everywhere for a reason, man. I think
yeah,
if you can escape them, that's a good deal. Maybe I'll move
yeah.
to Vegas.
Texas too, right? I think Texas is
I don't know. I
also
don't know about Texas.
is
Can ask
Texas.
Joe
Yeah,
Rogan.
yeah. Most likely he moved there because of that.
Probably, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't want any tax on that. What $300 million he got for moving to Spotify?
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't want to pay taxes. I wouldn't want to pay taxes. I have nothing. So
Yeah, well,
Uh,
he's got everything.
yeah, yeah. What do you think about him? Have a guy that's in that position. Undoubtedly, he's an icon of the sport,
Hmm.
right? Like, his voice will always reign in highlight packages
Hmm.
until we're dead. Not even until he's dead, we're dead, right? And now a lot of people just have turned on him
Oh
and
man, I'm
don't
one of them.
enjoy.
I'm
Yeah,
one of
and
them.
I don't know if I turned on him, but like I expressed that he is not the same.
Yeah.
And I saw like this. I'm gonna correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw somebody talking about this, and he said that the reason why we're starting to notice Joe Rogan and the way that he does commentary is because of all the other people that that have been introduced into the commentary booth with him, and it just showed us how the levels of
Hmm.
commentary, what kind of levels there are to commentary, and the newer generation of commentators that are coming in are just much higher level than Joe Rogan is in
Well, and
just every aspect.
you've got actual fighters coming in now and doing commentary and thriving in that role. Guys like Paul Felder. I sing Paul Felder's praises all the time. I think he's a phenomenal commentator, and the huge leg up he has on Joe Rogan is the fact that he's actually fought a ton of
Mhm.
times in the UFC against the highest level of competition. I know Joe's a lifelong martial artist, but that's something that he can't. I mean, he hasn't done that, right? He has no frame of reference when it comes to an actual fight, and guys like Paul Felder do. And I think also Joe. It seems like this is just purely speculation, but it seems like maybe his I don't know if it's the money or just the how busy he is, but his fascination with the sport or his interest has waned a bit, and he's maybe not researching the way that he used to. You can kind of tell he
Mhm.
used to have kind of pepper in these interesting little tidbits about the fighters and things he'd heard, and now it's just like constantly. That's all he's contributing at this point is just screaming every now and then, and that's what makes it into the highlights you were talking about. Half the time there'll be a highlight for a fight, and his scream is from a different fight altogether. He wasn't even screaming
Mhm.
about either of these fighters that we're talking about. It's just they've got all these Joe Rogan screams on a soundboard that they just pump in all the time. Yeah,
You're
I'm
right.
tired of it, man.
You're right. He is contributing
Yeah, I think it's
his
time.
O's, right?
He's got all these other things going on. He's
He's
got the
hurt.
podcast. Exactly, exactly. And half the time the guy's not even hurt.
Yeah.
It's or that's deep. Talking about submissions. He's barely touching the guy. He just yeah, I'm over him, man. I think he's got enough going on outside the UFC that it's time maybe to ride off into the sunset and make some room for these other guys. I don't know. That's
I feel
my
like
two cents.
him and Goldberg, they were the perfect combination for
Hmm.
each other,
Hmm.
and they were so enjoyable to listen to during that time,
Yeah.
during that era of MMA. They were perfect for that.
Hmm.
But now we're into this era where it's just so much more advanced, and
Yeah.
I feel like if John Anik wasn't here, man, it
Hmm.
would be
Anik is fantastic, man.
yeah.
And that's the thing, Goldie and Joe Rogan were great at the time when the UFC was still kind of a bit of a fringe sport, but now that it's on ESPN and it's really trying to get that mainstream reputation, you need real pros, like pro broadcasters like John Anik at the commentary desk, and
Mhm.
real fighters. This is what boxing has always done. You've always had retired boxers as color commentators. Now fighters are doing it in the UFC, and it's the quality of the commentary is just so much better. Um, so I'm all for it. I think, I mean, when I turn on a UFC broadcast and it's the first fight of the night, and I hear those voices and it's like Anik and Felder, I'm like, all right, this is perfect. But then when I fire it up and it's Anik and Rogan, the enthusiasm for me just wanes right away. I'm like, all right, I'm turning the volume down. I can't listen to this all night. Just Rogan screaming, contributing nothing. But when you get some good fighters on there with Anik, that's the dream team in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't like the combination of Rogan and DC. I like
Yeah,
DC when he's with Bisping or
exactly.
Felder or even Dan Hardy, right? Dan
Hmm.
Hardy's not bad. Um
I
yeah,
think
it's just Rogan. I feel like
yeah,
Rogan is just outdated. He's
yeah,
outdated now. It's
he
just
is.
history.
He is. I like DC as well, like you said, when he's with anybody else. And I can't
Mhm.
remember if it was on an SCMP podcast or somewhere else, but I raved about this before that when it's Rogan and DC together, it's like they're two buddies just on the couch watching the fights.
Mhm.
The technical analysis kind of disappears and they just like they joke and they laugh, which is kind of fun to listen to, but also not what you want. You want some expert insight, right? And you don't get that when they're just messing around and having a good time together.
Yeah, they're
So
doing a fight companion,
yeah,
and we're not there. People are not watching or listening
yeah,
to for a fight companion. They're listening for
you want to learn
commentary,
new
like
things, man. Exactly.
exactly.
It's
So
yeah, you don't get that when they're just having a blast like two buddies sharing a couple of beers and
exactly.
buying the pay per
Well,
view.
the people that are listening right now that are joining us, yeah, keep the questions coming. We'll get to some of the questions.
Mhm.
But today we have a couple topics that we want to get into. First is the lightweight title picture. It's getting really rocky and confusing and discombobulated, and we're gonna try to break that down somewhat. We'll talk about the return of TJ Dillashaw. It seems like he's gone very quiet for some reason. I don't know why. It's weird because the title fight is coming up soon, and you would think that he would be in the media somewhat, maybe even sliding in as a backup. Who knows? And then we're gonna get into the Stephen A. Smith and his comments and why they're so preposterous, like Stephen A. Smith likes to say, and point deductions in MMA.
Mhm.
We'll get into that. But let's get into
Good
some
stuff.
questions, some comments here. We got Asian Persuasion MMA. Shout out to Leon. John Anik, DC, and Paul Felder is the dream team. I
I
can't
agree.
argue with that. You know what I mean? That's a great team out there doing what is it? Commentary. Christopher Edwards Bailey, he says best combo is DC and DC, positive and negative. That is also another good combo, right? DC or Dominic Cruz, he is not a guy that will back down. He's very opinionated, and I kind of respect that. You know what I mean? He's not going to just
Yeah.
go with the flow, right?
I don't love Cruz on the mic, man. He's a great fighter, and I certainly think that he has a lot to share. But I just find I don't know people like to rag on him because he's a bit monotone. That's not even the problem that I have with him. I find that he sometimes sounds annoyed that he's having to explain things to people. He's watching something that is so second nature to him, and he's like, I can't believe I'm having to walk these idiots through an arm bar. You know what I mean? Like, which is of course not true. I'm sure he loves the commentary gig, but that's sort of the impression I've gotten in the past. Where he's not my favorite, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now,
Hopefully, he's not listening.
another. Yeah. Hopeful he's listening. He's listening right now. I could see him through the window, or not the window, but through the internets.
He's always watching, man.
Yeah, exactly. There's always people watching. Now, let's get into this title picture, right?
Do
So
it, man.
first thing is this comment from Christopher. You guys see Ken Flo and Anik. He's been speaking with Faraz. You see, so from what I remember, right? Don't quote me on this, but Kenny Florian said that he's been speaking with the coach. I don't know if it was Faraz, but that coach said that GSP is getting ready to fight Habib.
Oh man,
Why they keep bringing this up again? Like Ken
I'm.
Flo, like I think he just did that just to like get the internet all shooken up.
I keep hearing about all of the these rumors about the GSP fight with Khabib potentially finally happening, but I'm not seeing any other source of the rumors other than this stupid remark from Kenny Florian that's like pretty much unfounded. It's pure speculation, not grounded in any real information as far as I can tell. And GSP is always training. If I'm 2 hours from Montreal. If I drive over to TriStar, tomorrow, I'm probably going to find GSP in the gym. That doesn't mean he's preparing for a fight. The guy's been retired forever. He's almost 40 years old. I mean, you listen to his interviews, he barely even keeps the door open to a fight anymore. He's like, well, maybe, but probably not. Habib clearly wants to retire despite all the pushback from Dana. Let these guys go, man. I've said it a million times. The sport just holds people hostage. If you become a big enough star in the sport and you win enough fights, they won't let you retire. Whereas on the flip side, if you start losing fights, everyone's pushing you to retire. Do you know what I mean? It's like the only way GSP and Habib are going to be able to retire in peace is if they come back and they each get knocked out really brutally. Then people will be like, all right, let's let them retire now. But for the
Yeah,
moment,
which
people just
which
won't let it go.
which would suck, man. I'd rather have them retired just like they did
This is
right
it, man. They
now.
both retired under the perfect circumstances.
Champions. They
Exactly.
retired champions,
And when
right?
GSP first retired in 2013 after that fight with Johnny Hendricks, people were, that was, people debated that decision a little bit. But the other narrative after that fight was people kind of singing his praises for retiring on top when so many other guys will, just eat a ton of head kicks and get knocked out over and over and over again and then retire. We got
Definitely.
to stop.
Well,
We got to leave these guys and just let them ride off into the sunset, man.
with Habib, right? He's retired, and I feel like this is just another something for people to talk about Habib and not being retired and him coming back, GSP coming back, which is probably not going to happen, like you said. And it really, if he does come back, I'm pretty sure the UFC wants them to fight at 155, which is most likely never going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and which leads into the lightweight title picture, right? Habib, I'm gonna do today. Today is let's pretend, right? Let's pretend that Habib is retired
We don't need to
The
pretend. He
UFC,
is retired.
yeah,
He
he's
announced his
retired.
retirement.
And okay, let's pretend the UFC says the title is vacant now, right? Officially vacant. Nobody holds the title. Habib is making movies with Will Smith, right? Bad Boys 4, Habib and get what is it? Will Smith, right? They're in the movie together. Okay, let's say that there
I'd
he's
watch
doing
it.
that. He doesn't care anymore, right? Now Dustin comes out. He's talking about he wants to fight Nate because that's a big fight. And I can see where Dustin's mind's at. He's like, either I'm fighting for the title or I'm fighting the biggest names. There's nothing else, right? So if they don't want to give him the title shot, he's just like, all right, you don't want to give me title, I will fight Nate because Nate is a big fight, or I'll fight the trilogy with Connor. And I'm thinking like, those are the only options that Dustin Poirier has, right? So for the title picture, Dustin has to be in there. I feel like he needs to
Yeah,
be in there,
absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
and the other name that comes to mind, and a lot of people are pushing for Charles Oliveira, and I understand that he is probably entitled, right? He's earned a spot in that title fight, but I feel like he's just not, and I hate to say this, but he's just not a big enough name. He's just
I
not a
agree.
name that the UFC is going to push unless they are like forced into it, right? So what I see is I see that Michael Chandler, someone that the UFC covets, and then like we go back to the when he was the backup, he could have slid in, he could have won the title at that night if things fell in place for him, but it just didn't happen. He goes in there and knocks out Dan Hooker. He earns his spot, right? He earns a spot against Dustin Poirier. But let's say they don't want to put a title on that. Then what do you do? What does Dustin do, Tom? What does Michael Chandler do?
Well, I mean, people seem to disagree a lot on what should happen in terms of the lightweight title if Habib indeed vacates that title. I think the one thing that everybody agrees on at this point is that Dustin Poirier should be a part of it. It's just a question of who he fights. Like, to me, it would be very strange and hardly credible if they did Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler for the title. Great fight, two of the best guys. But I mean, I think a lot of people would agree that the matchup doesn't quite make sense if Dustin Poirier is not involved. He needs to be involved in the title fight. He obviously recognizes that. He said that he wants, he wants the belt. That's what he's after. But at the same time, you know, I read an article the other day about his social media following has exploded. He's obviously, doing appearances he normally wouldn't have done, but he's knocked out Conor McGregor, and, his star is exploding right now. And I think he's kind of cluing into the fact, as he, experiences all of this, that he's got to strike while the iron's hot. He could potentially, earn another title shot down the road. He may not be able to he may not have the leverage to fight Conor McGregor a third time down the road. He may not have the leverage to fight a guy like Nate Diaz down the road. I mean, right now his star is higher, like burning brighter than it's ever been before. Now's the time for him to get those lucrative super fights, and I think that's what he's realizing. And I think he's potentially even placing a little more value on those kinds of fights than he is on a title fight. And like you said, a guy like Charles Oliveira, not a big name at this point for Dustin Poirier. So I can kind of understand, his excuse me, his reluctance to take a fight with a guy like Oliveira or Chandler when he could go out and fight McGregor for a third time, fight Nate Diaz. There's a lot of history on that matchup, a lot of mustard in that matchup. And those fights are going to make him, millions of dollars. So I totally get what he's thinking, but I think he has to be part of the next lightweight title fight, though.
Yeah, definitely. Well, MD, he's saying if a fight between Dustin and Do Bronx would happen, how do you guys see that playing out? What do you see, Tom?
I've been thinking about this one, and it's a weird one because Charles Oliveira seems like the kind of guy who looks amazing when he's winning. As long as he's dominating the fight, he looks fantastic. But the second things start kind of going south for him, he seems to, just fall off a little bit. We've seen him experience some kind of brutal losses over the years. The Paul Felder one was obviously the most recent one. The Max Holloway one, I know there was some weird injury to his esophagus or something like that, but he has this kind of habit of these weird losses. And then on the flip side, recently he's looked better than ever in all these fights. He's dominating, he looks fantastic. So he's one of these guys where, on the one hand, I can kind of see him going out and taking Poirier down, threatening with submissions. On the other hand, I can imagine a world where Poirier starts landing on him. Then, we're not getting the Charles Oliveira of 2020. We're getting the Charles Oliveira of 2017, who's not quite the force that we have now. So I think, it depends a lot on Poirier's game plan in the fight and what kind of offense he can get going early. If it starts going Oliveira's way and he can get the momentum going, then I think the fight looks better and better for him the longer it goes. But if Poirier can come right out of the gate and just start blasting him, then I think that's probably Poirier's fight. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the key right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is Charlie Olives, has he gone over that mental hump? That he's kind of never been able to get over in the
Yeah,
past, right? Where he
bad
would,
nail but good hammer. Someone just said that in
yeah,
the comments. That's bang on,
yes,
man. That's exactly it.
it's perfect, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that is it right here. Dustin, but the thing about Dustin is, like, Dustin can finish from anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
like anywhere, literally. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he has the finishing prowess of probably the top 5 percentile, right, in the UFC, where
And
he can just,
Oliveira
yeah,
has been stopped with strikes, and we've seen him get submitted. We rave and rave about his ground game, but it's great aggressively or offensively, perhaps not so good
mm,
defensively. Like I can't remember, we've seen a number of people submit him. Anthony Pettis, I think Jim Miller submitted him back in the day, right? Or was it the other way around? I can't remember. But
yeah,
I
something
think
like
Jim
that.
Miller hit like a calf slicer on him or something, didn't he? Yeah,
That's
I mean
right.
he's
That's
he's
right.
tapped out before, so he looks great when he's knocking people out and submitting people. But on the flip side, we've seen him, fall victim to his own tools countless times. So I mean, if you're a betting man, if you're a smart man, you got to put your money on Dustin Poirier because he shows up every time.
Yeah.
Unless he's just knocked out really quickly, he's always in the fight till the fight's over. That's not exactly true in Oliveira's case, I don't think.
Then what's the biggest fight, do you think? Is it Poirier and Chandler for the title? Poirier Charlie Olives for the title, or is it Poirier trilogy with McGregor for the title?
Well, I
What's
mean,
the
if
biggest
if
fight?
we're talking, money and mainstream interest, it's obviously the
Exactly.
Connor trilogy. There's so many, different narratives heading into that one. They're tied 1-1. Connor didn't quite look like himself in that last fight. A lot of people are saying, there's that angle. Is he on the decline a little bit? Did he just have a bad night? It's the shot at redemption for the sport's biggest star. Dustin's looking to show that his win over Connor wasn't a fluke. And then you just got the Conor McGregor factor. The guy's the biggest star we've ever had in this sport. I mean, if we're talking in terms of money and just mass appeal and mainstream coverage, it doesn't get any bigger than that fight right now. The only fight the UFC could put together that's bigger than that fight is maybe the Conor and Habib rematch, which of course isn't going to happen. So that
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest one. The question is that so appealing to the UFC, that they would forego a fight with a legitimate contender like Chandler or Oliveira to make that Poirier versus McGregor trilogy?
So for legit contender wise, like
Mm-hmm.
the two people, two lightweights that earned a title shot that could face off for the vacant title, who would you put in that fight?
I mean, if we're talking purely on merit
Yeah.
and rankings and recent wins, it's clearly Poirier and Oliveira. I
Mm.
mean, Chandler looked amazing knocking out Hooker. That's a huge win. Still just 1-0 in the UFC, though. Oliveira's on like an 8-fight win streak, beat Kevin Lee, beat Tony Ferguson. I would say those wins are just as valuable as Chandler's knockout of Hooker. So to me, that's if you're looking at just like a purely, looking at the best option from a purely competitive standpoint based on the recent accomplishments of all the guys involved, it's got to be those two. But Chandler does have he's got a lot of momentum behind him. Before he came to the UFC, he had a few nice wins in Bellator, a lot of first round knockouts. So he's got a case too. But I think at this point he still does fall short to Charles Oliveira.
Um, was it Zazakita?
Mm-hmm.
Zazakita, he said, especially since Dustin himself asked for Connor and Nate, how can the UFC prompt merit-based fights when the fighters themselves don't care about merit? It's all about money fights. And this is
That's
true
true.
though. It's
Yeah.
true. But the thing is, difference about Dustin and some of the other guys is Dustin's earned the status to chase after the money fights because he's already had the belt. Even though it was an
Mm-hmm.
interim belt, once you already have the belt, that kind of the belt is not as I don't know if it, I can't I don't know. Is the belt not as valuable to you since you already had it before? And either you're fighting for a belt or you're fighting for big money. You can't not step backwards because you don't have many fights left. I think Dustin's
Mm-hmm.
probably thinking that too.
He does. Yeah, he knows that, man. And the truth is that the belt is never, as if there's a bigger fight than a championship fight, then take that fight. I mean, the whole point of this sport is to make money, right? Yeah, you want to compete, but it's prize fighting. You want the biggest prize available. And if there's a bigger prize outside of a title fight, then of course you would go take that prize or go compete for that prize. It's great to be able to call yourself the best in the world for a short period of history, but why would he go fight, Charles Oliveira, win the belt, or conceivably lose when he could go fight Conor McGregor for a third time and make more money than he's ever made before, potentially in his entire career? It's to me, that's a no-brainer. I love Dustin Poirier. Guy's been around forever. He's put in the hours. He's been through so many wars in 2 divisions. I mean, this guy's earned the right to start making some serious money, some boxing money, So let him fight Conor, let him fight Nate. He's good enough that, no matter how those fights go, he could earn another title shot in a year's time. Title's not going anywhere. Conor McGregor and Nate might be. So take those fights while you can get them, I think.
Cole Shelton, he brings up a good point because we
that.
kind of like glanced over this. I remember seeing this in the news. Oliveira turned down Chandler for 258. He won't get a fight. But didn't they say Oliveira turned him down for 257 also?
Well, he turned him down at 258 allegedly because there wasn't a belt on the line, and 257 I think was because he couldn't make weight on time, couldn't make the lightweight limit on such short notice.
Isn't that twice? Isn't there's a 3-strike you're out rule with the UFC?
Also, I mean, these are professional fighters who generally have 6 to 8 to 10 week camps. Mm-hmm. You can't just be asking these people on 2-3 weeks notice to come fight one of the best guys in the world. So of course he's going to turn it down. And if he couldn't make weight on short notice for 257, why is he going to be able to make weight on for 258? I mean, why is Dana even asking him? He's already told you that he's not able to do this kind of thing.
Well, Dana Cole makes a great point right there. He says Dana will go, look, the guy didn't want to fight. You have to answer the call, right?
I guarantee you that's why Dana did this, man. He recognizes that, he's got these 5 fantastic lightweights. He's got Conor, Poirier, Chandler, Oliveira, and maybe throw Diaz in there. Mm-hmm. Oliveira is the least famous, the least valuable. I mean, that sounds terrible. He's an amazing fighter. But if we're talking mainstream appeal, and you go around and ask 10 strangers on the street to who these people are, they may tell you who the other 4 are. They're not going to know who Charles Oliveira is. And I think Dana realizes that. A lot of hardcore fans want to see Oliveira in the next title fight. Dana's probably like, well, no, I can make bigger fights. How do I get Charles Oliveira out of this conversation for a little while? Just act like the guy's been turning down fights. And the way to do that is by offering him fights he could never possibly accept. I don't know, tinfoil hat maybe, but I think this is Dana just trying to eject Charles Oliveira from the contendership situation for a little while.
That's I could believe that. I mean, I don't know if it's like malicious, but it just doesn't fall into place with his plans of where he wants to move the division, what kind of matchups he wants. And I think this is what I think Dana wants. I think Dana wants the Poirier McGregor trilogy for the title.
Belt on the line, man.
Absolutely. For the title. I mean, and then
the Scrooge McDuck comics back in the day where Scrooge McDuck's eyes light up with dollar signs?
Yeah.
That's Dana right now, man. When he's thinking about that trilogy fight, I mean, Conor wants it. Dustin's willing to do it. He tweeted about it today. He said something like, we're doing that trilogy or something. Like, it's going to happen. I mean, unless, somebody gets injured or something, or the UFC, can't make it worth Conor's while to come back, they're going to make that fight, and it's probably going to be for the title.
And this is the other thing is I feel like the UFC will have Nate Diaz sit on the side to see if something happens, like he will slide in and fight Poirier or
notice, man.
Yeah. So he's done it before. Mm-hmm. So why not have him do it again? And it's it makes it exciting, but then at the same time, merit is not something that you want to put into the conversation if Charlie Oliveira is not fighting for the title next. And I see Charles Oliveira fighting someone like I could see him fighting Hooker next. I don't know why.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, if they do the Conor Poirier trilogy, then I feel like you have to do Oliveira and Chandler, and then that could be the number 1 contender fight, or you could have that on the same card and call on one of those guys if Poirier or McGregor gets hurt. I mean, I assume that the next lightweight title fight, whoever's involved, they'll probably have 2 big lightweight fights on that card, just in the event that somebody tests positive for COVID or something. You can't be too safe these days.
No, you can't. Lucas Lopez, a guy that's in the chat more often than not. Thanks, Lucas, for joining us. With the pandemic, how can a fighter be so off weight that they can't accept a big money fight within a month. I think it's just laziness. If they blow up, that's big in between. Yeah, I understand what Luke is saying in this comment, but then there's guys that's their lifestyle. Their lifestyle is to like blow up
Mm-hmm.
and throughout the camp taper down and then
Mm-hmm.
fight. And that's like kind of like their cycle that they go through. So for them to stay at a certain weight, at a low weight throughout a month or 2 months or 3 months, it's much more difficult for certain guys that's their style. That's what they do. And speaking with certain fighters, man, even I think Chandler too. Chandler, he's a guy that's pretty big for the lightweight
Mm-hmm.
division,
Mm-hmm.
but he loses so much weight throughout a camp, and that's why he always wants a camp. That's why he turned down that short notice fight. I feel after the Habib and the Gaethje fight, right? He
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he turned down that one.
Right.
The reason why is because he just couldn't make the weight, and it
Yeah,
all
and
depends on the guy.
expanding on that too, it's easy to want these fighters to just be in fight shape all the time and just keep their diets on point and stuff. But then you look at a guy like Charles Oliveira who just beat Tony Ferguson, biggest win of his career, finally right there in the title mix. You telling me this guy can't, after a performance like that, go order a pizza and have a few beers and take a week or two off after a grueling training camp in the pandemic era? Of course, his weight's not always going to stay, right above 155. These people have lives. They make these huge sacrifices, and when the fight's over, of course they're allowed to take a little bit of downtime, and they're going to get bigger, and then it's going to be harder to get back down for their next fight. So I think I don't think it's laziness. I think it'd be asking an awful lot of fighters to just stay fight ready at all times. But on the other hand, you got to be ready for these opportunities, I guess.
Zaza Kida says that Olives is the new Ferguson in the sense that he is going to be pushed to the side since he has no name or following.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it always goes back to that following. What kind of following do you have? What kind of can you move the needle? The whole Nate Diaz, fiasco of he doesn't move the needle and then he moves the needle. Like I think you have to take the chance. You have to take the opportunity, and that's what Nate Diaz did. He kind of just
Mm-hmm.
threw it out there, took that opportunity, and blew up because of that. And also, who blew up in not in the same way, but that they blew up even though they lost. I feel like Dan Hooker blew up a little bit in the last fight. Heading into it, he was doing so much media. He kind of
Mm-hmm.
embraced the moment, even though he didn't perform and he didn't win. Still, people like Dan Hooker, they starting to figure him out now. Like
Mm-hmm.
when he's talking, he's just banter. It's banter for him. It's not like he's just like attacking people and talking shit. It's just he's just having a little fun. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like people are starting to realize that, the fans. And you know how I know is because look at the views that he gets. Like his
Mm-hmm.
interviews.
Yeah,
His
no doubt,
interviews
man.
get insane views. Like I was looking at Submission Radio. They did an interview, his first interview since the loss.
Yeah,
And
that
in
was a
like a
great
couple
interview.
days, it's like like 200 something thousand views,
Mm-hmm.
man. That's pretty insane. Those guys get views anyways, but still, you can't
Mm-hmm.
put just any name with them and then they're gonna get 200,000 views over that,
Yeah, I think
amount.
Hooker was helped a bit by the fact that his last two fights before the Chandler fight were both
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like both headliners. He had two crazy wars back to back. So, I mean, I think he wasn't a household name, I don't think, but he
Mhm.
really won the respect of a lot of fight fans because before those two fights, he was doing some pretty impressive things, but he
Mhm.
just wasn't crossing that level into the top of the top. But then after beating Felder and that war with Poirier, that really was crucial to his stardom. I think obviously the Chandler loss sets him back a bit though.
And one thing that I wanted to point out about the Hooker fight is that, and I look at Stipe and a couple other fighters that it's happened to them too,
Mm-hmm.
is that Dan had 2 wars, 5-round wars
Mm-hmm.
in 2020, and he comes back and gets knocked out in the first round. And Dan's known for his chin.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an effect do you think those 2 wars had on his chin heading into this fight? I'm not saying his chin is like weak now, but I feel like when you've gone through that type of fight and come back and get hit hard by a power puncher,
Mm-hmm.
most likely you'll end up getting knocked out, right? Because we've never seen him drop like that. Have you?
I don't know. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think
Yeah.
he's been stung before, but I can't recall seeing him getting blasted like that before. But of course, the two wars in 2020. I'm sure they had an effect. You need to give your body time to recover and your brain time to recover. Honestly, I'm surprised that he took the Poirier fight so soon after the Felder fight. Even though he won that Felder fight, it was obviously a war and he sustained a lot of damage in that. And then he goes against Poirier, 4 months later, one of the hardest hitters in the division. He was lucky, I think, to get through that fight without getting knocked out just based on the punishment he had taken recently. So I don't think it was particularly surprising to see him get stopped in that Chandler fight. But then again, the other wrinkle is that Chandler hits like a truck, and he set that punch up perfectly. He went low and just kind of like Hooker's head was right there, man. He couldn't have set that up better. So, even if a guy with the most iron chin might have gone down from that punch. It was pretty
Because
perfect.
I look back at like Stipe when he went to war with Ngannou and took a lot of punishment, even though he won that fight, and he comes back and gets clipped by a DC. But then when he fights him again twice, right? He had time off, he had a camp, and he went in there at, closest to 100% as possible, and then he wins both fights, right?
Yeah, and the punch that DC dropped him with too is like an uppercut in close in the clinch. Like it was just like a little boop, it wasn't like a big bomb or anything. So I mean that's clear as day to me that he just wasn't ready to fight again after getting hit by Ngannou over and over again. That's getting hit by a school bus, 40 times in 25 minutes. It's you're not gonna be the same after that. You need to take some rest.
Yeah, and I think like that could have been a possibility, and in heading into Hooker's next fight, which most likely he's going to take some time off, right? You could tell that he's going to take some time off and train, and then just
with the travel issues too.
Exactly.
I mean, I think he's just leaving Abu Dhabi now. Probably he had to stay there, I think, for 2 weeks after the fight, and then he has to quarantine for 2 more weeks when he lands.
No, he has to stay there for a month.
Right. Yes. I mean, like, he has to be away from his family for all this time. He's not just going to take a fight with whoever in 2 months. He's going to want to
That's not going to
something
happen.
really worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that's that he needs that rest, man. Once he gets that rest, his chin will get back, and Zaza Kita was saying that he's only seen Hooker drop or wobble with Barboza and even Dustin, right? But like never
Barboza
dropped.
Really hurt him with the body shots too. Those weren't head shots. I mean, he certainly landed on his head, but I think the real problem in that matchup was just that he was getting just kicked in the stomach and the ribs and the kidney over and over again.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Cole was talking about going back to Charlie. Oliveira needs to learn English. The same reason why Jose Aldo never became that big of a star. UFC won't promote non-English speakers. Same reason why Weili is learning English. And hey, it's true. I've said this many times. It's true. If you don't speak English, this is an American company. And English is the language, and they promote everything in English, and they do have offices around the world, but mainly whenever they do shows and anything, it's all in English. The commentary is in English. You do need to be able to do interviews. You do need to be able to go to press conferences and field questions from the media. Those are things that are so important, and you need to be able to just go on, like, let's say they have an opportunity for you to go on this game show or this talk show. You need to be open to that and do that, because that's going to grow your audience, your popularity, right? And some fighters, they don't do any of that. And you think the UFC really likes it? Nah.
It's a weird thing because, I mean, there's really no denying what Cole said. If you learn English, you instantly become more marketable in this American company. On the other hand, it's really hard to learn a new language, especially as an adult. If you're learning 2 languages as a kid, that's a little easier, I guess. But I mean, this, you learned English later in life, right? I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. I tried learning Italian in university. I learned a bit, but like, don't put a microphone in my face and expect me to do an Italian interview. I crumble so fast. It's not easy to learn a language. So I think probably a lot of Brazilian and fighters from elsewhere recognize that it would be really valuable to learn English, but it's hard to do. It's expensive to get a teacher. You got to, learn every night and stuff. That's time and resources a lot of these guys don't have.
Yeah, American Top Team, I know that they were giving classes, English classes.
An amazing idea.
Yeah. But that's such a big team, and it's like basically a company, right?
Super gym, yeah, man.
Yeah, super gym company, factory, whatever you want to call it, and they could invest in that. Now I wanted to go back up here because this person talked about Weili, or Cole talked about Weili learning English, and that's good. Where is this? It's just mentioned earlier in the chat. Let me find it. Here it is. I think this is it. Yeah, it says, what do you think of Brian Campbell saying on Morning Combat John Wei Lee is just a token champ that the UFC is coddling and is an easy fight for Rose,
Man,
who
this guy
is the
needs to get
rightful
out of his
owner?
own way.
Like, who is this something that's recent? I thought he said this like a long, long time ago, like
All,
before Wei
all,
Lee was the
all I
champ.
know is that he was under fire for that remark about Ryzen a few weeks ago. If this is recent, I'm shocked because you'd think that he would have learned his lesson, saying such ridiculous things after that ordeal. But
Yeah,
I don't recall
it's
hearing this
weird.
recently.
Yeah, I don't think this is recently, but even if he said that Wei Lee is a token champ, that's ridiculous, right?
Well, and
Like
that the
she's
UFC is
won.
coddling her.
Yeah,
She
like
just fought the best fighter in the division,
yeah.
Joanna. I mean,
The two best fighters in the
yeah,
division,
and
the two most dangerous fighters in the division.
I'm starting to seriously question whether or not Brian Campbell actually follows this sport at all. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it. It
And
doesn't
how
seem
is
like
it an easy fight for Rose that's
yeah.
that's a word too that a lot of people like to throw
Well,
around
Rose
if this
Rose
is
Rose has fought Joanna and Andrade too recently, and for
mm,
some reason those are easy fights for Wei Lee, but not for Rose. I mean, where's the logic there? That doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
So I guess my answer to that question, Phantom, whatever his name is there, Ghost Phantom 98, is that it's ridiculous. That's a stupid thing to say, and he shouldn't have
Yeah, it
said it.
is. Yeah.
Somebody take that guy's mic away, man.
I think that's something that he mentioned a while back.
Yeah, probably
Let's go
so.
to
Yeah,
this. Let's move on from the lightweight title picture to
let's do it.
TJ Dillashaw. We got Tristan, a guy that's on the chat very often. Thank you, Tristan, for joining. I feel like TJ Dillashaw should get an immediate title shot after UFC 259. He never lost the belt, so you kind of have to put him in a title fight. Now, what do you think of that? You know what I mean? Like, Chris Tristan is missing a big chunk
Yeah,
of
there's a
like.
little detail you missed there,
Yeah.
Tristan. Just a little thing. It involves a needle. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. This is my objection to that is that it's not that Dillashaw just failed the drug test. I mean, he was doing EPO, which is the king daddy of banned substances in sports. It's the Lance Armstrong drug. It's something you can only inject. You can't accidentally take it unless you're, in a gym change room and you accidentally sit down on a needle or something. It doesn't happen accidentally. He made a choice. He's owned up to the choice, owned up to the mistake, which was very adult of him, and I certainly respect that. But it doesn't change the fact that he was, taking a serious performance enhancer and cheating, for who knows how long. He was caught for one fight, could have been longer. That to me takes him out of the conversation for the moment. Having said that, no denying that he's one of the best bantamweights ever, with or without a little help. So he's still right there. I think he should get a title shot soon. I think he would benefit from taking another contender fight. I don't want to call it a tune-up fight, but a fight with another top guy, to kind of get his timing back and stuff. It's been a long time since he's fought, and his last fight was very short. It was a loss. He doesn't have a lot of ring time in the last few years, so I think he would benefit from taking another fight rather than jumping right into an immediate title shot. And there are other guys that have been fighting while he was suspended for using a banned substance that have been out there earning it. Guys like Corey Sandhagen. I think he should probably be ahead of TJ, especially if he beats Frankie this weekend. One thing I could see happening is maybe TJ versus Corey for the number one contender fight or something like that. But I don't think TJ should be jumping into an immediate title shot personally. And that's no disrespect to him. I just think, he made his bed.
Yeah, he made his bed and he paid the price. He was
Mm-hmm.
suspended. And when you get suspended, that means you get everything stripped from you. So when you get everything stripped from you, you pay the price. And when you return, it doesn't mean that you're going to come back and get what you were stripped of. It just, you got to earn it. You know what I mean? You got to show that you deserve that title shot. And I feel like he should earn it. He should fight somebody. Some people don't even think that he should fight somebody in the top 10, that he should start like any other fighter that's returning. But let's be fair, you know what I mean? Like, he was one of the best bantamweights of all time before before he was popped by USADA. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, like, okay, maybe he was busted for that EPO for that fight, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, he didn't do anything before that. Just give
Mhm.
him the
I
benefit of
agree.
that
I
because he's
agree.
never
That's
been
fair.
caught,
Yeah, he
right?
didn't get caught for
Try to,
anything else. Yeah,
yeah,
totally
a
fair.
lot of accusations, but
Even
he's never
still,
been
though,
caught.
even still, even if it was just the one fight, he did a very, very serious performance enhancing drug and something that's used, explicitly for cheating. It's you don't take that for any other reason, really, as an athlete. And it's great that he did own up to the mistake. I think that's really important.
Mm.
Um, but I think, I mean, you can't just put him back into a title fight right away. I just don't think that's fair to the other guys who haven't been suspended for things like that, who have been putting in the work in the division while he's been away, paying for his crime, and give him a top 5 guy or something like that. And if he's as good as we all believe he is, if he's as good as he believes he is, he should have no issues winning that fight. And then I think it's absolutely fair to give him a title shot.
Yeah, a lot of eyes on him when he returns against anybody, whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't even know if TJ is a needle mover, to be honest with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is he that popular? I don't see him as being that extremely popular than most fighters, just because of the style that he fights it with. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's gonna be the guy that they're gonna give it an immediate title shot to.
He could
It's
almost,
hard to say.
I think, he may become a bigger star after this scandal that he's gone through.
Hmm.
Certainly bad publicity, but there's that expression about there's no such thing as bad publicity. More people know him now than they did before, surely because he went through such a high profile scandal. Um, and I think a lot more people are going to be paying attention to his next fight because they're wondering how's he going to look when he doesn't, have the help that he had in his last fight. So I think certainly there are more eyes on him now, as you said, than there were before he went through this.
Yeah, he could market himself as like the
It's a comeback
Lance
story.
Armstrong of
Yeah,
MMA,
I don't
like
think he want to do
that would
that.
get people that
Yeah,
would get people watching you, right?
yeah,
Like if you
exactly.
you embrace the bad. I would like to see him embrace the bad guy role. Maybe that's what he should do. There's no bad
Mhm.
guy really in the bantamweight division.
Well, you saw
Uh,
him. You saw him sort of doing that for a little while with this whole snake in the grass thing. For a while he seemed a little bit averse to that nickname, but then he didn't he start calling himself the Viper or something, or Dwayne Lidwig was calling him the
yeah,
Viper. He was kind of
yeah.
leaning into that nickname a little bit, perhaps embracing the
Mm-mm.
heel role a little bit. I think that'd be great for him, man, because he's gonna have a hard time convincing people he's a good guy for a little while, just because of what he's gone through. Um, so why not lean into it? I say go for it.
Yeah, just yeah. Maybe that was the EPO talking. I don't know,
Who
but
knows, man?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just Tristan was saying that he got caught using it for the flyweight fight,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's true. That's black and white. You can see it on
Yeah,
paper that he did
for
get
sure.
caught. So you don't know for sure with the whole bantamweight division, but
Hmm.
we'll see what happens with TJ. Man,
It's
TJ
an
is gonna,
amazing division.
yeah, it's an amazing division. There's a lot of guys willing to fight him at the top of the division. If this weekend Corey Sandhagen fights Frankie Edgar,
Hmm.
right? And they're talking about the guy that wins that fight could possibly get the next title shot. And I'm thinking they could actually be fighting to figure out who's going to fight TJ Dillashaw.
I think that's exactly the way forward. Have the winner of this fight this weekend fight TJ. The winner of that can fight the winner of Jan and Sterling. I think that makes perfect sense. At the time that the fight this weekend is fairly close to Jan and Sterling's fight. The timeline should line up pretty well. I think it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and also if let's say Sandhagen takes out Edgar, right? And
Hmm.
Sandhagen has some history with Dillashaw.
Hmm.
Like I think Dillashaw brought in Sandhagen to prepare for Dominic Cruz
Yeah, I
back
think
in
that's
the
what it was.
day.
Yeah.
And then they used to train together at Muscle Farm when there was like one big facility
Hmm.
and in Denver. And last week I had the one of the coaches from Team Elevation on and he was talking about it. And I thought that was interesting to like when TJ was probably just a regional guy.
Hmm.
What not TJ, Corey was a
Corey
regional
was,
guy.
yeah.
TJ would bring Corey in to prepare him for title fights, which
Hmm.
that's insane, right? That you're preparing
Yeah.
a guy for title fights, and now you're gonna fight the guy to fight for the title, or maybe even
Hmm.
a title fight.
Well, it says a lot about how good Sandhagen is. If he was
Yeah.
getting that invitation so early on in his career, TJ must have recognized that he's a good fighter. A guy with a
Mhm.
bright future. If he's able to emulate a guy like Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, that's always fun. Now,
Hmm.
let's see. what else we got here? He says, could TJ fight his style without extra cardio? Yeah, that's gonna be hard, man, because his style is a lot of cardio involved, man. Like
Mhm.
I've known fighters that have tried to emulate the style of TJ, and they said,
Mhm.
man, it takes so much energy to
Mhm.
keep moving like that and to keep your body flowing at a consistent rate and throwing strikes and being technical. And dude, TJ, like so many people respect him for the style that he fights with.
His style's amazing, and I think he accomplished what Dominic Cruz was always trying to do. Cruz always had that crazy herky jerky style, but it always felt a bit random to me. Half the time, I don't think he even really knew what he was doing. It worked well, but I think TJ was a lot more calculated with his movement than Cruz ever was. I think he kind of took what Cruz was doing, fine tuned it a bit. Obviously, he had a lot more power than Cruz, so I think he just kind of took Cruz's style, amplified it a bit, and then paired in his own strengths, and that was the perfect concoction for him to become the best bantamweight in the world. It was an amazing style.
And it's, I don't know, TJ, it's a style that you haven't seen anybody else really do.
Yeah, not in MMA really. A few guys have tried, but it's
Yeah.
also a style that you'll never see anybody over like maybe lightweight do because it
Do you
just
think?
requires too much cardio. You
Yeah. Do
couldn't,
you think
Stipe couldn't do
also
that
the wrestling background too? It helps because he doesn't have to worry about as much
with his
someone trying to
cardio. You
take
mean?
him down. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, just
yeah.
like his style of like positions that he puts himself in when
Hmm.
he's throwing strikes and
Hmm.
kicks and and
Hmm.
and whatever. Like he could sit there and like be in certain positions where he could possibly other guys could possibly get taken down, but him, he doesn't need to worry about that as much. And that's the thing too. It's like, is he gonna come back with the same style that
Hmm.
he had before? And those are all questions, right? And also, I saw a picture. I don't know if it's doctored or whatever, but there was a picture of him and Michael Chandler next to each other,
Hmm.
and TJ looked bigger than Michael Chandler.
TJ's huge,
So,
man. I mean, he's
yeah,
probably one of the most ripped fighters we've seen in a while. The guy's like absolutely shredded and always has been. It's going to be interesting to see how he looks when he comes back in, honestly, because there is that question mark with the failed drug test. How much was that contributing to his cardio and his physique? But you see the pictures he's posting on Instagram. I mean, he looks fantastic. He looks like he's in incredible shape as
he's
always. So I don't think we're
he's
going to really
so
see a
big.
very different TJ when he comes back. I think he'll look more or less the same, and provided he hasn't lost a step because of the inactivity, I think he'll be as good as ever and probably beat anyone he's matched up with, outside of maybe the current champion.
TJ, a lot of people are probably thinking also that he could maybe come back and look like Dominic Cruz,
Hmm.
But the thing about TJ is like oh, we got to remember TJ when he first got suspended, he had surgery on both shoulders,
Hmm.
which is never good, right?
Hmm.
When you have to have surgery on both shoulders, and we don't even know what else. I think he's been doing a lot of the stem cells and
Yeah.
just to recover from the wear and tear, and it could work in his favor. It could not work in his favor. You seen the zombie? He took 3 years off, come back. He did really well because he
Hmm.
got to recover his body. Um, it could be that same case for TJ. We don't know until we finally see him face top competition.
That's it, man. There's so
Uh,
many variables in his case.
exactly. Now the next thing is, I wanted to talk about the whole. Okay, let's talk about this before we transition. It says Campbell said that after hearing that the fight could be in Singapore and Carla Esparza would be next if Rose doesn't accept. Oh, so Campbell said what he said
Recently.
after recently. So I
Well,
don't know,
I'm sure
man.
that guy's very knowledgeable, but he's comporting himself in a way recently that suggests he's not. So maybe he should be a little more careful what he says.
Exactly. So I don't know. Let's talk. Let's go from Brian Campbell to Stephen A. Smith. Like
Easy peasy, man. Birds
let's
of a feather.
yeah. So Stephen A. Smith, man, he's a guy. If you don't know who Stephen A. Smith is,
You're lucky.
then you're lucky. But then at the same time, you don't know like sports world. Like
Mhm.
Stephen A. Smith, and there's a few guys out there, a few names out there that are just kind of similar. He's a character, right?
Mhm.
He's a journalist, he's a reporter, he's done all that in the past. He has like tons and tons of experience. Like it's ridiculous how so much connections he has. But then at the same time, he's most known right now for just talking, just
Mhm.
talking, like just being a, I don't even know what you would call it. I don't even know what you
He's
call that. He's
he
an
well, he
analyst. Is he an
yeah, exactly.
analyst?
I guess so, yeah. He's a talking
Yes.
head, you know?
Yeah.
But
So
but
he's an analyst, right?
mhm.
And he analyzed recently that, from what I remember, is that he is not a fan of women fighting.
Yeah, so what happened basically is that he started by saying he objects to seeing women fighting men, which I think is a fair concern. That's okay. That's not overly outrageous or anything. But then he just kind of went off on this tangent about how he doesn't like watching women fight at all in MMA or boxing. He said the pugilistic sports, so combat sports. He just doesn't like seeing women involved. I mean, why are you saying that in this day and age? If you think that, I mean, I disagree personally, but I mean, keep it to yourself. You know, you're going to cause a social media firestorm saying something like this. But I think he knows that. You mentioned that he used to be a journalist. This guy's been around forever, and every now and then he'll still kind of show the flashes of the journalist he once was. I think he is, quite brilliant when he really wants to be, and he understands. He doesn't have a great grasp on MMA, but he certainly understands the other sports he covers very well. And when he talks about those, and he's not trying to be controversial, he can be a very thoughtful and insightful guy, but his shtick these days seems to be just rocking the boat, saying the things that he knows are going to generate some controversy and get people angry and get people talking on social media. So I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I'm sure that's the way he actually feels, but I think there's a reason he said it out loud instead of just keeping it inside. I mean, the guy's just looking to shock people at this point.
Yeah, that's 50% of what he does is just yell, yell
Mm-hmm.
and yell and yell, and then he trying to find something to get
Yeah.
himself on the news, and that's what he did with this, and he's getting paid millions of dollars to do it. So ESPN is not going to fire him. So people don't try to think that he's going to get fired for something.
No,
It's
no.
not going to
And
happen.
he didn't say it on ESPN exactly. So, I mean,
Exactly. So,
yeah.
but anyways, yeah, he's saying that, I'm just looking at the quotes
Mm-hmm.
on MMA Junkie, and it says that Smith said that, for example, don't ever want to see a woman boxing a man. Of course not. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a woman in the UFC fighting a man, even though there are some women out there that'll kick a dude's butt. We get we get all that. When I think about pugilistic sports, I don't like seeing women involved in that at all. I just don't like it.
See, that's
I
where he,
wouldn't promote legislating laws to prohibit them from doing so, but I don't want to see women purchasing or punching each other in the face. I don't want to see women fighting in the octagon and stuff like that, but that's just me. And it's fair for him to have an opinion like that, right?
yeah,
But
that's it, man. That's the thing, right? Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but also you don't need to share every opinion you have, especially when you're on a platform. You have a platform like the platform he has. Just keep these things to yourself. But the fact is that he wants a reaction. He's pandering. He knows he's playing us like puppets. He knew exactly what
mm,
was going to happen, and lo and behold, it's happening. And suddenly everyone's talking about Stephen A. Smith again.
Tenuin, he writes that Stephen A. Smith's opinion is just that, his opinion. Even Dana said that women would never fight in the UFC after he watched one-sided fight. That's true. Even Dana said that he didn't say that he didn't like women fighting. He just said that the women would never fight in the UFC.
My counter to that, though, is that women do fight in the UFC now. Stephen
Yeah.
A. Smith, obviously MMA is not his main focus, but he is masquerading as a guy who's qualified to talk about MMA. How can you possibly not enjoy watching women fight anymore if you've watched some of the recent women's bouts in the UFC? If you watched Weili versus Joanna last year, for example, how could you possibly think women are any less qualified to do this than men are? So I think all he's doing by saying things like this are totally damaging and destroying his own credibility and just ensuring that the few people that still cared about his opinions on MMA no longer do. He's biting himself
Yeah.
in the ass, man.
Ghost Phantom 98, he makes a good point that Stephen A. Smith brings the MMA community together by hating him.
We need
Yeah,
him, man. Maybe we need him. Without him, we'd all be arguing with each other. But here
exactly.
we all are banding
Uh,
together.
All right. Chris, Stephen A. Smith saying it all on International Women's in Sports Day is sad. I guess he's saying International Women's Day, Sports Day. Do you guys prefer Brian Campbell's opinion on Asian MMA or Stephen A. Smith's on WMMA?
Here's what I suggest, man. You take those two guys You tell them that, you're some wealthy, benefactor, some millionaire. You want to start a podcast. Tell them you're starting a podcast and they're going to co-host it, and then put them in a podcast studio together. But don't tell them that there is no podcast, and just let them babble at each other for hours on end each week. We'll never have to hear from them again, and they'll get to say all the stupid stuff they want to each other. That's my solution. I don't want to hear either of those guys talk about either of those things personally.
When you look at when you compare women's MMA to uh men, right? Men fighting, you gotta let's look at realistically, right? It's much more violent, right? There's many more knockouts, right?
In
And
men's
brutal
MMA,
knockouts too
yeah.
in men's MMA, right? Compared to
Mhm.
women's MMA. So when you watch women fight, there are some out there that are just power punchers, just knockout artists, but predominantly most of the women are not like that, right?
Mhm.
So the violence, that if you have a Richter scale of like violence level, right? Men's can go to 10. Where do you the highest the women are they at 10? Sometimes, but it's not as common as, let's say, a men's fight, right?
Yeah, but on the flip side, because women don't typically knock each other out quite as often, there's a there's a higher likelihood of just prolonged beatings.
Yeah.
If a fighter's not able to put her opponent away, then she may end up just beating the crap out of her for 5 rounds or 3 rounds, which is, long term maybe more damaging than just getting knocked out quickly, and that's the end of it. You get to sustain, 3 concussions in one fight rather than just one concussion. So um, I think on the surface, men's MMA may look more violent, and certainly it produces more decisive endings, I think, but women are plenty capable of hurting each other badly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is
Yeah,
a
and
tough
also
sport,
like
no matter who you are.
in some of these fights they do get really bloody, and
Yeah.
these women do get battered really bad, just like the men do, and
Well,
cuts on the faces and
I hate to keep
just
circling back to that Joanna and Wei Li fight, but look at Joanna's head at the end of that fight. Have you ever
yeah.
seen it? I mean, when have we ever seen a hematoma like that in a men's fight? Mark Hominick obviously had that very bad one against Jose Aldo, but we've only seen this happen a few times, and the worst one
No,
we've seen
hers
was in
was the worst.
I mean, and that was in a women's fight. I mean,
Yeah,
clearly they were hitting each other very, very hard for that to happen.
and also, if going back to that fight, if she didn't have that hematoma on her head, do you think she
Mhm.
would have won that fight?
I honestly scored the fight for her at the time. I've kind of rewatched it since, and I feel like the Wei Li win was definitely fair. But when I was watching it live, I thought she deserved it, not by much. Like I recognize it was really close, but at the time I did kind of score it for her. But I mean, nobody really lost in a fight like that. They both of their stars just exploded after that. But the hematoma, I'm sure, played a role. I don't know if judges are supposed to ignore things like that when they happen, but how could you ignore that? It's taking
You
up half the
can't.
cage. Yeah.
You can't ignore that
Hmm.
monster of a
Hmm.
mountain on her forehead. Just
Yeah. I mean,
it's it
certainly
was the
caught the eye. Yeah.
it was one of the trippiest things you'll ever
Yeah,
see,
man.
man.
And it
It
happened.
just
Remember how fast it happened too? It was like the
yeah.
Hominick fight as well. There's a bit of swelling, and then suddenly, she turns towards the camera, and it's just,
Yeah,
it was,
man, it's a trip, dude. Like, but
yeah,
Stephen A. Smith, he. I think every like 6 months he'll say something about MMA or the UFC, and it gets a little controversy stirred
that's it,
up,
man.
and that's what he does. So, we talk about it a little bit, but other than that, we're not tripping. Like Stephen A. Smith, he can say whatever he wants,
Hmm.
and it's gonna bring attention to the UFC or MMA, and that's a good thing. So just let him say, and
Yeah,
don't get too into your emotions about what he's saying. Is because that guy, he's sleeping on $100 bills,
that's it,
and
man. He knows what he's doing.
and the reason why he's sleeping on $100 bills is because you become emotional about what he's saying,
Hmm.
and that draws more attention to him, and then he adds more $100 bills to his
Yeah, then he
mattress.
gets some
And
$100 pillows,
yeah,
$100
exactly.
blankets,
Exactly,
$100
dude. Like,
pajamas. The only
exactly.
way this stops is if we just start ignoring everything he says about MMA, which I
Yeah.
don't think we're capable of
But
doing.
then he's saying everything about the NBA and the NFL,
Exactly,
and
exactly, and
it
he'll just
doesn't
keep
matter.
saying
Like,
he'll say more and more controversial stuff just to get our reactions. So get
yeah,
used to it. Buckle up.
that's sport.
Yep.
10, he says, why hasn't there been a woman pay-per-view star since Ronda? Ronda at one point made more than all the men. I don't know if that's true though.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Ronda was in a class all her own. There really
Yeah.
haven't been that many male pay per view stars either. There's Connor. he's in this kind of same class as Ronda. He's obviously a bigger star, but there's that like top echelon. There's the Connors,
Mhm.
Brock Lesnar's, Ronda's, and then there's kind of GSP and John Jones, and then there's Habib in there somewhere. There aren't really that many fighters, male or female, that have truly been like international mainstream superstars the way that Ronda and Connor have, regardless of
No,
gender. So
exactly.
yeah, you
And
can't
and
you can't
Ronda's the
attribute that to
one.
gender.
Ronda's the one who kind of created this aura. She had the aura like I think it was different from any other fighter ever in the history of the sport,
Mm-hmm.
where she can go into a spot and just take over like it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing, and then actually still be that regular girl. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
she was just like a regular woman, but
Mm-hmm.
like it, you know why I think that she like I feel like she's like a regular woman, and she has that like connection to like just the normal girls in the street
Mm-hmm.
like hanging out or whatever, the girl next door, is because when she lost, man, she took that loss so
Terribly.
devastating, yeah, terribly,
Yeah.
and devastating that I've almost felt like, man, she's just a normal girl, man. She doesn't have this like she has true belief in herself, but she doesn't have that like Conor McGregor,
Mm-hmm.
that one thing that Conor McGregor has. He could win, he could lose, but he'll just be the same. I think
Mm-hmm.
Ronda was just different in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll never see anybody like her again, and that's why we'll never see a pay-per-view star, not in the near future, like Ronda Rousey.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have to take someone that is, I don't know. It's just it'll be hard to say what it would take, but it'll have to take somebody that already has some kind of following that they built
Mm-hmm.
up to transition over to the UFC, and then you could create something massive.
I think we were a bit spoiled because Ronda and Connor both kind of reached their peaks one after the other.
Mhm.
Like that's not ordinarily going to happen. There will be other stars of their caliber in the future, but I think the fact that they happened to kind of peak right around the same time, that sort of got us thinking that, oh, we're going to get a fighter like this every couple of years, which is of course not the case because there wasn't anyone like them before them, and it could be 10 years before there's somebody else with the same kind of drawing power that those two have.
Mhm.
It'll happen again, but we can't just expect these people to come out of the woodwork every couple of years. These are really special fighters and special personalities.
All right, so we got a couple things about Michael Chiesa. So this guy is
Mm-hmm.
saying, Alan Bones Jones, is he related to John?
Mm-hmm.
Most likely. Is Chiesa versus Maia a good fight? And then there's another comment over here from Arthur Antonio Nguyen. Are you are you Brazilian Vietnamese? Possibly. Doesn't Kiesa versus Wonderboy make more sense for the ranking? So, what do you like? Do you like Kiesa versus Maia, Kiesa versus Wonderboy, or Kiesa wants Colby Covington? I don't think that that's gonna happen. So,
Mm-hmm.
my Wonderboy, Maia, what do you think?
On the surface, I think Kiesa versus Maia looks like a nice fight, but I think the fight we get would look a lot like Maia against Usman Covington. Like he
Mhm.
would just get, I mean, wrestled. He's got great jujitsu and he's always a threat on the mat, but he's also, the blueprint is there on how to beat Damian Maia at this point, and Kiesa has the wrestling chops to do the same thing that Covington and Usman did. So I don't really like that fight just because I feel like it's fairly predictable. I think Kiesa versus Wonderboy makes a ton of sense for both guys based on what they've done recently. I mean, if I was the matchmaker for that division, that's one I would probably make. Having said that, I would love to see the Covington fight too. I think Kiesa would give him a good fight. I'm not sure how it would go. I think Chiesa's cardio would be a factor. He's never really shown any cardio problems, but Colby obviously can just go forever. So I mean, can Chiesa keep up with Colby? That's an interesting question. Can he wrestle with Colby? Colby's obviously one of the best wrestlers in the division. There's some interesting variables there, and I would certainly favor Colby. But that'd be a good fight. But like you said, I mean, I think Colby at this point is only accepting a title fight or the Jorge fight.
Yeah. Dorji, hi guys. Good morning from India. Good morning, India.
Good
We
night
always
from
we
Canada.
always appreciate Indians coming on and getting involved. Another question here from Tristan. He says Chimaev versus Edwards, winner gets next title shot after Burns, I guess. And well, I guess it all depends on who wins that fight.
Mm-hmm. At this
Because I
point, man,
feel like
go ahead.
Chimaev. will likely get a title shot if he wins. Edwards, not 100% sure
I
if
feel
the
like he
UFC
deserves
wants
it.
that.
If he
He
beats
deserves it.
if he beats
Yeah.
the biggest hype job in the UFC right now, then yeah, he deserves it. I think the UFC will be okay with it. But I mean, Chiesa could I mean, sorry, Edwards could go beat up a janitor or something at this point. It'd be enough to earn him a title shot. He's already earned the title shot. He's been hurt by the inactivity, but like I mean, he should have gotten it by now. I think if he beats Chimaev, who's obviously such a huge deal right now, it's undeniable. And then obviously, if Chimaev wins, we know if the UFC is going to do. They're hoping he's the second coming of Habib. Um, I think that's pretty predictable, unless maybe Jorge and Colby end up fighting, and one of them looks really impressive in that fight. I can see them maybe getting the next title shot. But you have to assume Chimaev is ahead of guys like Kiesa, ahead of Wonderboy, even though he's accomplished so much less than both of them in the division.
Yeah, he's ahead of them in the eyes of the UFC, in
Yeah,
the
but
eyes
I
of the
mean, he
matchmakers.
shouldn't even be fighting someone in the top 15 at this point. I hate this matchup. I know it's happening one way or another, and I've kind of come to accept it. But like, this is just the silliest matchmaking. It's totally disrespectful towards Leon. I mean, Chimaev, he's fought one guy at welterweight who's now 0-2. I think has since been cut. So I mean, like, how does that earn you a fight with a number 3 guy? That doesn't add up to me. I don't like it. I think he should be fighting someone outside the top 15 and then work his way through like anybody else. But that's why I'm a lowly journalist and not working as a UFC matchmaker.
Well, there's a lot of guys, people want to put this narrative out there like Chimaev is almost untouchable, right? Like because of his
Yeah.
fights in the UFC and how he finishes fights and he hasn't been hit very much. And
What if he
respect
has
to
a
him
glass
for his
jaw?
preference.
We don't
Yeah.
know.
We don't know because I've
Yeah.
seen highlights of him getting dropped and going for takedowns
Hmm.
in previous fights too. So we don't know for sure. But the thing is, Chimaev is in such a lucky position,
Hmm.
that they want to jump on his train as quickly as possible, and he has to take advantage of that. Like if I
Yeah.
was him and if I was in this position, I would
Of
take the Edwards
course. Of
fight
course.
instantly. And then they're telling me, oh, you're gonna get a title shot if you win. I'll be like, hell yeah, let's get
Yeah.
it in there real fast and make this money. And
That's it, man.
and and another thing is, Tan was saying right here that Chimaev barely speaks English and yet he is a star. But he does speak English.
He does.
Like
Yeah.
if he's done press conferences, right? And you don't really need to say too much. You just need to be able to say it the way
Hmm.
that you would say it, like as you know what I
Just the
mean? Like
basics, man. Get the
exactly.
emotions
Like
across.
you
Yeah.
look at Habib. Habib learned English in the beginning of his UFC career.
Hmm.
He didn't speak any English, so he wasn't doing any interviews. He wasn't
Whereas
doing anything.
Jose
Now,
Aldo
yeah,
didn't speak any,
and
which
he
is the
just
difference.
doesn't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Just doesn't
Yeah.
want to. And
Yeah.
and even like JDS was a guy that didn't speak English in the first half of his UFC career, but then
He
he
speaks better
learned.
English than me now, man. That guy's
Yeah,
English is amazing.
exactly. He's like he's American, right? So, um, but yeah, like him, he grew as I think as a star and kind of elongated his career because he
Mhm.
spoke English, because he's relatable, and of course he can fight. But like those things are factors, and a lot of guys they don't have that. They don't have that. They don't have that drive. I think
Mhm.
to do that, and I think it'll give you financial rewards
Yeah,
eventually
yeah.
if you do something like that.
I'll never like advocate for fighters having to learn English because it is such a difficult thing to learn a language, and English is a difficult language to learn. That's a difficult thing for native English speakers to comprehend because they're comfortable with the language, but it's a weird language with weird rules, unlike any other language. It's not an easy one to learn. Um, and that's a very USA centric view of the world that you have to learn English to become a superstar. Having said that, though, I mean, it's true. If you want to become a huge star in the sport, you're gonna have a difficult time doing it if you can't communicate the things you want to communicate. So it's a tough situation. You're very lucky to be born an English speaker in MMA, I guess.
You are. Now, we're gonna take a couple more questions and then we're gonna shut it down. Let's get to the next one. The next one is here we go. All right here. Dorji, what will be the number one difference maker to win for Usman versus Burns, respectively? What do you think, Tom?
That's a tough one, man, because they're very different, but they're also quite similar in a lot of ways. They're both big, strong welterweights, amazing grapplers. I think the key for Burns will just be not being controlled, not being pressed through, into the cage for the duration, not being taken down. when if he gets taken down, scramble out, get on top, do whatever he can. That's obviously the key for him. We know what Usman does best. He's a wrestler. He's obviously got very improved striking, but he's still that's what got him to the dance is the wrestling. For Usman, I mean, he has to steer clear of Burns' power. Burns has shown some huge power at welterweight. He was a big puncher at lightweight too, but certainly a bigger puncher as a welterweight. And then the BJJ, obviously, which is like his best weapon. That's where he's really lethal. So, but I think Usman has the tools to do that. I think he's a very smart fighter, and he can kind of control where the fight unfolds. I think his striking is good enough, and he's smart enough that he can probably steer clear of any big bombs. So yeah, I think the key for Burns is just to avoid getting mushed into the canvas and the cage all night. And for Usman, it's just being smart and not taking any dumb risks against a guy who can finish you anywhere.
I think this is how like when I close my eyes and think of how this fight will play out. I feel like we're gonna see Usman press forward. I think a lot of pressure
Mm-hmm.
from Usman, like
Mm-hmm.
more than ever,
Mm-hmm.
and try to suffocate and cut off the cage
Definitely.
against Burns. And what I see Burns doing is we're gonna see a lot of lateral movement from Burns. He's gonna move to the side, not necessarily to the back because he doesn't want to get stuck to the cage, but to the side. He's in a lot of lateral movement, a lot of counters, right? Throwing big bombs with counters against Usman. And I see one of these fighters getting dropped
Yeah.
in the stand up. I see that happening. I feel like these guys are gonna get into some crazy exchanges because they know each other so well. And that's the difference maker too, is that they know each other so well. They've fought each other thousands of times, hundreds of times at least. And then that's what makes it fun. And I see that one of these guys is gonna end up getting finished.
Yeah.
I see that happening. I see like I'm leaning towards Burns. I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm leaning towards Burns. I just feel like he just has more ways to win.
He definitely has more ways to win, but I think I still have to lean towards Usman. I think he gets a lot of hate for his fighting style, but I really do think he's a special fighter. I think I don't know if he'll do what GSP did, but I think he'll be the champion for quite a while. I anticipate 4, 5, 6 title defenses from him. I think, um, and I think as long as he's smart and he doesn't just accidentally dive into a guillotine or just sit
Mhm.
there and start eating shots, I think he has all the tools to win.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I look at Usman as a guy that's gonna be at the level of a GSP. Like he has every everything to become someone like that, right? But then you're never gonna not lose.
Hmm.
And if Usman's gonna lose a fight, I feel like this is the only matchup that he will lose. If he beats Burns, I could see him just running the table.
Yeah.
Seriously, just like running the table, like becoming more dominant. I think he'll surpass Habib. If Habib stays retired,
Hmm.
like Usman just runs the table, man, you surpass him, man. You're like at a level of like a GSP, like one of
Yeah.
those long reigning champions.
That's what
It
I
goes back
anticipate.
to the whole argument of Habib. Is he one of the greatest of all time? Maybe for the lightweight division, but he hasn't proved that much compared to GSP, compared to John Jones, compared to Demetrius Johnson, compared to Anderson Silva. You can't put him at the level of those guys, man. And a lot of people, they just want to throw him in there, just like, hey, just put him in
Yeah.
there. He's 29-0. He's beat the 2 top lightweights, but really he needs to beat the top 5 lightweights, the top 8 lightweights,
And
the top 10
overall,
lightweights.
he's
Like,
only been the champion since 2018. Obviously, part of that was the fact that he had a hard time getting a title shot. But you look at a guy like GSP or Anderson Silva or Mighty Mouse; these guys were the champion for years and years and years in their divisions. It's not just beating a couple of good guys; it's a run of sustained dominance against the best guys available at the time, and that's what these other champions have done, and what Khabib unfortunately hasn't done. Having said that, I do think Habib is probably the best lightweight ever, at least. But I can see, I can definitely foresee something like that in Usman's future. I think he's got all the skills to really stick around for a while at the top.
yeah, definitely. Now, next one is who you got. A lot of welterweight stuff. Who you got? Luque versus Woodley. This is a fun fight.
Great fight. I mean, you just don't know with Woodley right now. That's the thing. It's like it's not like he's been getting brutally knocked out or anything. He's just been getting like kind of taken down and grinded out, and then slowly they wear away at him and stuff. It's not like he's just getting dropped right away in these fights. Um, provided that he's still durable and still fast and still, fighting, he still has great fight IQ. I think he can definitely win this fight. But if he's even fallen off a little bit, then, I can definitely see Luque winning this probably by knockout. But I think I still have enough faith in Woodley just and his championship experience, his wrestling, his power, and just his smarts. He's always been a very smart fighter. I think that, even if he's fallen off a bit, he should be able to win this. But this is not an easy fight for him, man. Tough matchup.
For Woodley, this is if there's like a crossroads fight, this is the crossroads
This
fight. A
is
lot of
it.
people thought the last fight was a crossroads fight, but I feel like this one is the crossroads fight. Like you could give fighters, a couple fights and they lose a couple, but they're fighting the top of the division, and you think like those are just bad nights, you know what I mean? But when it gets to a certain level of a certain streak of losses and then they're getting finished every time, then you start to, question what level that they are at in their career. And I feel like this is Woodley right now. This is his crossroads fight versus Luque. What Luque is looking at is Luque, what we're gonna find out is Luque championship material.
That's
And
the
I
big
feel like
question.
if he goes out there and finishes, knocks out Woodley, then we know him to be at that level of championship material. Like he's a guy that could make a run for the title. He might not win it, but he'll be there at the top 5. And that's what I see.
Yeah, I've always felt that he's, I don't know that I've ever considered him a future champion, but he's always kind of struck me as a guy who will at one point probably at least fight for the title or, be in
Yeah.
a number one contender fight. But in order to do that, he needs to beat a guy like Woodley or a guy like Wonderboy. Obviously that didn't work out, but like he needs that a win at that next level, and that's eluded him so far. So this is a huge fight for him.
Yeah, now we got a couple other questions trying to filter through.
Yeah, lots
All
of
right,
questions.
do you think Ghost Phantom 90? I see Usman Burns as a great matchup, but why does most of the MMA community hate this fight? Have you felt that like they don't like this matchup?
I think people don't like Usman, and they're not going to like any of his fights because the worry is that he's just going to win how he so often wins and just kind of grapple and wrestle these guys to a decision or a late stoppage, and that's unfortunately a style that a lot of guys don't like. So I think that's the worry here. People have kind of come to see Burns as a pretty exciting fighter and a finisher, and I think people are scared that maybe he doesn't have the skills to avoid the kind of fight that Usman usually fights, and we could be in for a slower night at the office, so to speak. And that's not to take anything away from Usman. He's so good. I think he's an incredible fighter. But people seem to just not. I don't think people are going to be excited for any of his fights unless he's fighting a guy where there's like a clear, obvious possibility that the guy might knock Usman out or something. And I feel like, he's got a lot of ways to win this fight with Burns. And Burns is, I really haven't gotten the sense that people are hating on this fight. I think Burns is generally regarded as an exciting guy, right?
Yeah, of
I think
course.
people just aren't sold on Usman yet. They're
That is what it is. People are not sold on Usman. A lot of people just don't like Usman. I don't know why, man, because I think Usman does a great job, like in his interviews, and just sometimes people just don't get on the bandwagon. And once he wins like 5 title fights in a row, 6 in a row, then you better start getting on that bandwagon, man, because
already the Covington and Masvidal wins for me. The way he beat those guys, those are the two best welterweights other than him right now. I would say Leon's obviously right there too. There's a couple of other guys, but he beat the two other guys that are right there pretty impressively. That alone, I was on the Usman bandwagon after that. I'm like the captain of the bandwagon. I'm right there at the front.
he's a machine, man. And
He is, man, and it sucks that he gets so much hate.
when you look at, okay, let's compare it. Like Habib, right? He won the title against, who did he fight to win the title? Remind me. Okay, he beat Iaquinta, right? Yeah. Which is, you know what it is.
Like 24
and then
hours, but still.
and then he beat McGregor, right? And then Poirier, and then he beat Gaethje, right? Three title defenses. Now, if you look at Usman, right? Usman beats Woodley, which a lot of people thought Woodley was unstoppable at that time, right? And he derailed that completely. And he comes back and fights Colby, which is one of the greatest rivalries we've ever seen in welterweights, right? knocks him out in the 5th round in an incredible fight, and then puts a completely dominant performance against Jorge Masvidal, right? And then if he goes in there and dominates Gilbert Burns, if you stack up like what Habib did in lightweight compared to what Usman did in welterweight, who would have a, a better, I don't know,
Like a better
a
champion.
better record, a better pedigree of wins?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say they're comparable because Habib's wins over Gaethje and McGregor and Poirier are really good wins, and he finished them all. That's a big thing, right? He dominated these guys, but I mean, they are comparable. Usman beat three really, really good guys, Woodley, Masvidal, and Covington. Um, and he beat them all really impressively. And, people talked a lot about how Masvidal accepted that fight on short notice, but so did Usman. He was preparing for another fight, but Gilbert Burns and Masvidal are very different fights, so that was probably not quite as challenging for Usman as it was for Masvidal, but it was still a big challenge to kind of change to such a different opponent on such short notice. And he blew it out of the water. He dominated that fight. So I think, I mean, it's frustrating that he's not getting the same kind of hype that that Habib got and continues to get. And I think it's partly because he's not undefeated. That was a big part of Habib's aura, was just the fact that he'd never been beaten, even if his first 20 wins or 10 wins or 15 wins came against cab drivers and movie theater attendants and stuff. That was a big part of his luster at the time. And Usman doesn't have that, even though he's only lost the one time, I think. And also their styles are a little bit different. Usman does, win a lot of fights by decision, and Habib does, he chokes people out and he's got the crazy grounded pound. So his style may be a little bit more appealing, but looking at their records, like in terms of title fights, I mean, they're neck and neck. So it'd be great to see Usman get some of the respect that Habib was getting.
All right, so we pretty much hit the 90-minute mark. Usually this is where I shut it down for the night. Thank you everybody that joined us for the chat. If we didn't get to your questions, come on next week, ask the questions next week, and we'll get to them. Thank you so much for being involved, guys. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to check out Tom Taylor at Tom Tay MMA on Instagram, Facebook, Twitters, everything. I mean, he's on Parler probably too, right? Are you?
Not Parler, man. Just
all right. Yeah. Well, Tom is a guy that I'm always gonna have regularly on this show. He's been on the show more than anybody, and the reason why is because he's the man, right? And it always enjoy speaking with him and digging into his brain and figuring out some stuff. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Tristan, thanks, man, for your involvement. Alan Bones Jones, appreciate you too. Just follow us on social media and follow Tom for sure. And we'll be back next week. Next week I have a guest. It'll be a coach next week, and I'm not gonna reveal it until later in the week. But yeah, see you guys and enjoy the weekend. It's gonna be a good fight night.